Okay, so let's move on to the return of serve, the returner, and yeah, let's just keep this conversation going. What are the sort of responsibilities of the returner? What are you trying to do, as the server is getting ready to go?
Well, as a returner, my job, again, like we've been talking about, when you're the player who's starting in the backcourt, or if you get, caught in the backcourt during the point, your job is to enable your partner. So as the returner, I'm always thinking, what shot can I hit to try to set up my partner, the returner's partner. I'm not thinking to myself, I got to be the hero here and I got to grip and rip all day and just bang returns for winners. I'm really looking to play shots that enable my partner. And so again, assuming that we are playing against a server who is going to serve and volley, my thought is always I want to get a ball down to their feet. And if I'm a right-handed player and I get a ball out here, and my bread and butter as a righty is my top spin forehand return to serve, well then I can safely go ahead and return down back here to the feet. Again, we're dealing with this server's partner that we talked extensively about in the other segment.
Sure.
Well, where you've really got to start to try to understand what this guy is going to do or he's not going to do. And sometimes if you have a service partner who is moving all over the place, if they're just fake poaching all day long, eventually you know that, and eventually it does. It stops distracting you, and you just look at the ball and just know that the cross court lane's wide open, and you can play it back cross court. Occasionally, though, if you don't know what this guy is going to do here, is you're going to have to lob. You're either going to have to lob or you have to play at least a couple of balls down this alley to try to control the server's partner, because this becomes really a mind game here of which player mentally is going to dominate the other one. And so as the returners or as the returner, I want this guy, I want the service partner wondering what I'm going to do, as opposed to I know that what he's trying to do. He's trying to make me wonder what he or she is going to do. And so it may be that in the first game or two of the match, I'm going to play a lob or two or here, or I'm going to play a drive or two down the alley, or even better, play a drive right at this player here. Because if I go down the alley and they're waiting there for it, I've really put the volley in their strike zone. Don't want to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and play it right where they start in here. And if they poach,
Okay, kind of jam them, yeah.
kind of jam them, and make it tough. But again, I'm trying to sort of set up the rest of the match. I want the server's partner, not knowing what I'm going to do. And I'm going to tell you this right now. I mean, most of the people I play against don't do enough movement. They don't do enough visual distraction. When they do show movement, they go. So eventually, you get to kind of get an idea of what they're going to do. But my job here is initially to get the ball down to the server's feet. And if I've done that, my returning partner will get into his starting position in just a second. Now the tables are turned. It's like I've just served, even though even though that I'm the returner, and now the returner's partner sort of takes on the role that the server's partner had when the server was serving, if that makes sense. Now what this guy's got to do is he's got to show a fake, or else he's going to poach. The other thing here is that if I'm going to set up, if I believe in that philosophy that my job as a returner is to set up my returner's partner, if I rip this return way too hard, well, number one, my consistency is not going to be there. The rec players, if you grip and rip off that return, I guarantee it, you're going to be low consistency on that. You guys will have a lot of unforced errors and give away a lot of points to the serving team. But the other reality, too, is even if I make it and the server's decent with handling that, I just don't have enough time to do anything. I don't have enough time to show a fake, and I really don't have enough time to be able to, get out here in the middle and kind of poach off any kind of transitional shot from the server that's going back cross court. So, my advice is to practice and work on as the returner, you know, work on returns to serve where you've got a cone over here, and you work on kind of returning to this transitional area in here, and not that you got to hit it hard. All you care about, whether it's hit hard or it's hit slow, is that it's down at the server's feet. And I think too often what people or what players are practicing is, I've got to really rip the ball to this area. You don't. I mean, I'd much rather have a half volley right in here that I can just kind of bump against and just, move my feet through it and, take it back cross court, than if I've got more of a slower ball where now out of my visual landscape I'm having to deal with this guy, jumping around in here. I'd much rather have a tougher ball in here where stroke mechanic wise I get to do less, and visually I don't have to deal with this guy here. So again, this takes practice. Want everyone to work on that. But again, your goal is to keep it away. Number one, obviously, from the server's partner, and number two, to get it back to the player's feet here and give your partner an opportunity to show some visual distraction out there in the landscape. And it might, it might change depending on the server. This guy might have a super slow serve, and by the time, he gets to his transitional shot, where is he? Well, he might be, just a foot or so from that service line, if not on top of it. So if you grip and rip, the chances are you're going to be giving this guy a volley that's up high, and that's not enabling your partner. So some of this takes a game or two in the match. If this is the first time that you've played these guys, you don't know what their shot making skills are. You don't know what their tendencies are. Again, if you go ahead and find out that this guy is just climbing all over this first volley because the serve is so slow, and maybe your tendencies are to start further back, and when they get this transitional shot, they're just cranking it on your partner. Well, then number one, let's start in closer so that you can get the ball earlier, which means that the server now has to deal with a transitional shot back in here. So you kind of have to adjust your position here depending on how big the serve is, or how slow the serve is. If I'm the returner and I'm playing against a big time server, you know what? If this guy is poaching a lot, then I'm probably going to tell my partner, you know what, man, we're going to have to try a few lobs just to get the ball in play. But all things being equal, Will, I think at the rec level, if you're on the service line, maybe half a foot behind it for first serves.
On the baseline, you mean?
The baseline. I'm sorry, on the baseline, or maybe half a foot behind the baseline for receiving first serves. You got to think about, if you get across court, that you force the server to have to play their transitional shot deeper in between the baseline and service line than if you stand too far back. If you're way, way back behind the baseline, you really allow the server to get up close, and then what happens is it's really a much tougher return to get it down to their feet. So my suggestion, that first serve, half a foot behind the baseline, maybe on top of it, and then for that second serve, at least a half foot inside, maybe a little bit closer. And because your idea is to try to take that return as early as possible, which means that when you chip it or drive it back to the server, it's down to their feet as deep as possible and as low as possible in here, and this now becomes an approach shot. I think the first question you asked me, what's the role? Well, the role is that you're trying to play an approach shot off of this return. Just like the server, you're trying to get up and join your partner and try to be the first team that gets the good volley, that gets the good net position before the serving team does. If you've got a slow serve coming in, you might be able to receive that thing halfway between the baseline and the service line. Slide it, chip it, get it on down low to the server's feet. And now you guys really, after that return, you're probably going to be up inside that, if not on top of that service line, and really have the advantage. So, blah, blah, blah. The whole role of that returner is to try to play a transitional approach shot and eventually work your way up to net to join your partner.
I think what you're saying here is really important to understand in terms of the return positioning, because it's very different than singles. Because singles, typically what you hear is, you're struggling with a serve. Maybe the guy's got a big serve. The natural tendency is to back up and give yourself a little bit more time. Well, that doesn't, as we just saw, that doesn't really work too well in dubs, unless by backing up, it just lets you take this massive rip at the ball. If you can back up and take a huge cut, then that might be one thing, but that rarely is the case. So you really actually need to stand in and manage your vertical court positioning for all those reasons you just explained. So I think that's a very important distinction to understand the difference between singles and doubles, because you can't return the same way in singles. You can't back up to buy yourself time in most instances when you're playing dubs, the way you can in singles.
That's a good point, Will. And I think one of the things is we do see a lot of players at the rec level who do back up, but we as a serving team really, really want to have that happen. If I'm the server's partner and this guy's way back in here, this gives me so much opportunity to show movement. I'm not saying that you have to poach, but in terms of showing a fake poach, it's so much more effective. And this guy, I'm telling you, if you fake and go often enough to where this guy doesn't know what you're doing, the further back you get, and then combined with this guy showing a little movement, you're just not going to grip and rip. You're just not going to have the mental freedom to go ahead and do that. So that's a really good point you brought up. The difference between singles and doubles, and good doubles players adjust their return to serve swing mechanics to become shorter.
Abbreviate the backswings.
Abbreviate the backswing so you can take the ball earlier. And again, it's a different type of return. All you're trying to do is get it down to this part of the court. You don't need to hit a horizontal winner like you might in singles. You're just looking to get the ball down here. So if I've got a guy who's got a huge serve, and if I've been, let's say a foot or two behind the baseline trying to deal with it, not doing a very good job of it, then I'm actually going to step up here and I'm going to get on top of the baseline, maybe a step inside the baseline, and just try to bunt this thing back. I'm just going to look for, can I become a backboard off of this big first serve and have the backboard sort of redirect the ball back cross court and hopefully down to this guy's feet. And, the reality is, if you think about it, swing shapes, the shorter the swing shape, in theory, the easier it is to have better timing than if you have a big swing shape. And so if you develop this, and again, just like anything else, this is not like, all right, I've got the information, I can now flip on the switch and just do it. You got to practice this stuff until, like there's no tomorrow. But you can definitely practice with, even if your practice partner doesn't have a big serve from here, is you could say, look, would you move up here halfway and just pound some serves to me here and let me work on that quick shoulder turn and just kind of a block type of return? Because I tell you, the big servers in doubles, if you can just block this thing and get it back in here, their mindset has gone from instantly, I'm the man, to, I got a problem. And so that's really the situation that you want to create. So, Will, good point about the difference between returning serve in singles and doubles.
Yeah, and you'll see this in professional doubles. All these guys, despite the fact that they're dealing with 130 mile an hour serves, they're right up on the baseline, sometimes inside, for all the reasons you just explained.
Right.
Okay, so let's move on. Let's say you get the return in, you get it cross court like you wanted to. Now where are you going?
Well, assuming that I can play this as a transitional shot, then I'm going to move up here, and I'm going to split step just before the server makes contact with their transitional shot. Sometimes it doesn't work that way. Sometimes as a returner, it's all you can do just to get the thing cross court away from the server's partner, and you can't really move in. If the server's done what we talked about in that first segment about serving to the body, Well, the chances are that you don't have enough time to get out of the way and be able to play it as an approach transitional shot. So if the best you can do is get out of the way of that serve coming to your body and get across court, keep it away from this partner, excuse me, you're going to be stuck back here in the baseline, and that's just the reality of it. Now you got to see what the server's going to do. Second serves.
Let me jump in real quick.
Sure.
Excuse me for interrupting, because I think you do make a fantastic point going back to serving into the body. To get out of the way of a body serve, you have to move laterally. So that prevents you obviously from moving forward. Whereas if the ball's down the tee or it's out wide, you can move diagonally to cut that off. That's going to put you inside the court, make it much more easy to transition forward. So that's another reason to go body there. I just wanted to point that out because it really prevents the returner from moving in. So yeah, I just wanted to highlight that.
No, that's exactly right. And so, I mean, and again, you can sometimes hit a decent spin second serve where you go to the body and the guy's forced to move laterally to get out of the way of it, but the ball gets up and it's in a position where you're where you're just not comfortably able to kind of move through it and play it as a transitional shot. So it does, I mean, serving to the body is just an absolutely huge play that I think that all of our listeners and viewers, really need to practice that serve direction. And not be thinking, well, because I'm serving towards the person, that means that the ball is going to, come back. Well, yeah, I mean, the chances are the ball can come back, but you don't give up court position and you don't give that returner the opportunity of gaining good court position. And just like you said, Will, if you serve to the tee, you serve out wide, the returner then has an opportunity to diagonally, and let me just kind of, let's say on this tee serve here, is from here you have you've got an opportunity to move horizontally, diagonally to it, bump against it here, and if you can get it back cross court, you're naturally moving up in here. So, so that's really, I guess that's the value there is serving to the body. Now, if you do get a second serve where you can step in and take it early, this is a classic approach shot, nothing more. And, on approach shots, what do? I mean, we move our feet through the ball as we're playing an approach shot. So that means you got to have the ball to your side. You can't move your feet through the ball in an approach shot if the ball's right on top of you. You're stuck. You have to stop instead of, kind of, awkwardly swing away from your body. So there's a huge premium here on if the ball is served to you is that initially you want to get away from the path of that incoming ball, get the right spatial distance away, and then be able to play an approach shot. And assuming that you can do that, just like we said, you're going to scoot on up here, and you are going to split step here depending on when the server is going to receive that cross-court return of serve. I mean, ideally, you'd like to be up here inside the service line, but if you hit your return too hard, where it gets back to the server, or if the server's really, played a slow serve, they've really moved in tight, you're going to have to split a lot sooner. So the timing of the split is basically you split wherever you are back here, depending on when the server is going to receive your return of serve.
Sure. Yeah. The timing of the split step is always dependent, as you know, on when your opponent is about to make contact, and you obviously have no control other than the type of ball you hit them to obviously give yourself time to close. But you don't. You can't just say, okay, I'm going to split step now, and
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of players. A lot of players think, well, I want to get out of no man's land. I want to get up inside the service line, so that's where I'm going to split step. Well, if you've got a server who hits a slow second serve and stays back, by the time that your return gets to them, you might be up inside that service line. So that's when you would split step. But, if the server's playing a second serve and they're coming in and this is where they make contact, you're right, Will. You got to split. You got to split sooner.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you've got the ball back at the server, and let's say you're splitting a little bit behind the service line.
All right.
What happens next?
Well, now you simply got to read what's going to happen here. And assuming that your partner has moved up and we haven't talked about this starting position yet, which is a little further back. But when they move up off of your good return and move up in here, again, the ball is cross court from you. If you're the returner, the ball is now cross court from you. It's not in front of you as the returner's partner's got the ball. And remember, your job when the ball is cross court, when both of you are up at net, is to keep an offset alignment here, where you're not totally crashing the boards and trying to climb all over the net. So, now as the server plays this shot, again, you have to know their tendencies, and it might take a game or two before you can figure this out. If they've got a high volley in here, well, you have to kind of go in defense mode now. You have to kind of go, well, what are they going to do? Geometrically, they've got an easy ball to hit back down to your feet. So you got to be looking for the shot. You got to be looking for that shot. And I'm always thinking of, what's worst case here? I want to prepare for worst case, but I also want to anticipate reality. So if, worst case is that the ball is up high and they can bang it down, then I gotta be looking for that possibility. And in my split step, I can't be coming out of my split step too early, thinking that I'm getting a pop up. If I've got a ball that's down low, I might be able to cheat a little bit out of that split step and now look for a ball that's going to get popped up. On the same hand, this player may have already seen this nice down low return to serve I played to them, and they've already shown a lob or two over here because that's the only way that they can handle it. So I got to be looking for that. You're really looking for sort of the two extreme possibilities that the server's got, and trying to account for those in terms of your split step footwork, in terms of how you come out of that split step, so that you can jump on that shot wherever it is. If they play this shot, which is really the toughest shot, which is a ball back down low to you, where now we've just reversed the roles. The server for a moment right there had the ball down low. Now they've gone ahead and played a transitional shot, and they've got the ball back down low to you, and now you're right around the service line, let's say, or slightly behind it, and you've got a ball down low. Well, you're not in a great position here. So, your choices now are going to be, can I take my time, not rush this, and kind of nudge it back cross court and get it back down low to this player, the server, or am I going to have to lob, let's say, over here? So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of possibilities here. The one I'm just describing doesn't happen that often. I guarantee you, most of the time, the server doesn't go ahead and play this kind of softer, low, cross-court, land at your feet type of shot and then transition in. If they do, and believe me, this is worst case, if they do, then you got to realize, all right, I don't have an offensive opportunity from there. If they played a ball up high, maybe you do. Maybe you've now got a volley that you can handle. But, for me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this low cross court, trying to find this guy's feet, reverse the roles, and really get up to the good net position here. And, we're going to see what happens. So really, the transitioning between the server and the returner, really good doubles, is about trying to get the ball down to that player's feet, transition some more until you ultimately get up to that good net position when the ball's cross court from you, and see who's got the most guts, to slowly and easily take your time with that ball that's down low, play it cross court, and feed it right down to that opponent's feet, and see what happens.
So at this point, basically, given the alignment we've just got, it's kind of, would you say it's who gets the first kind of, ball higher in the strike zone that they can kind of go after a little bit more?
Absolutely.
Or just,
absolutely.
Okay.
Now,
So
let
it's
me.
kind of cat and mouse.
It is cat and mouse, and here's where cat and mouse gets screwed up. Let's say, and I see this all the time, let's say that the returner has played. The return back in here is transitioning. Here's what I see a lot: is the server's partner backs up, and the server's partner backs up because they're not sure what their partner's going to do. And now what happens is, let's say the server gets it back. And this player, I'm telling you, if you watch video rec players, or you watch at your local tennis facility, this player, or worst case, the returner's partner, ends up really close to the service line. And once they end up close to the service line, well, now this transitional shot is not as tough. You know, you can go up higher because this guy's back in. If they were here, if they saw that transitional shot popped up a little bit, well, they're going to jump on it. But they're now back in here, and so it's a much easier shot to play. So that's where this kind of gets messed up off of this transitional shot. Is that the server's partner or the returner's partner, once the ball gets past them off of either the return of serve or the server playing their transitional shot, these guys start to back up and they get back here in the service line. And now the middle becomes that huge vacuum where if you're playing against guys where they start up at net and they usually back up a little bit, whenever you can get a ball in the middle and you can get it down low, automatic. Go there every time.
Okay. So let me ask you this: in terms of the like the server's partner in this instance backing up a little bit, they kind of tend to back up and then just kind of hang out there, correct? Versus kind of closing back forward. Because some things I've seen, the Bryans, for example, when the ball gets by them, they'll take a couple steps back, but then they'll split forward and retransition forward, if that makes sense. It goes back to what you were saying earlier, where you always kind of want to be moving forward a little bit because that gives you some momentum to get into your volley.
That's right. You know, and really, I mean, realistically, and it's a good point with the Bryan brothers is, you know, the guys really move. Let's say we got a Bryan brother up here as the server's partner. They move with the ball. So if the ball is going to the returner, they're moving in. You know, once it gets back in here, they're moving with the ball back slightly. But they're trusting that their partner's not going to hit a fat one here to the returner's partner, where if they stayed there the whole time, that they just get tattooed. And the other reason for moving back a little bit is that if you're up here off of that serve and you stay there, you really start to limit the space that the server or this partner has in terms of the shot that they want to play back cross court. So you're going to give a little space here so that your partner's got room to play it into. But the other thing too is right, you kind of want to guard against worst case, which is the returner's partner popping over here and poaching it off. And not that you can do much about it whether you're here on the service line or up in here. It really doesn't make much difference. Even if you're on the service line and this shot gets popped up, you can't do a whole lot to defend that shot anyway. But you're right, Will. I mean, once this ball gets back to the server and they play their normal transitional shot, it gets back into you want to follow the ball back in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're basically moving vertically kind of up and back a little bit. But when you back up, you don't just hang out there. That's the big mistake you were talking about. You actually move back and then split forward and move forward a little bit to see if you can cut off the ensuing shot.
Yeah, and and sometimes when you move back, when that return gets past you, you can tell. You can tell by the degree of difficulty that your partner is having to deal with what they're going to do here. And it could be the return is so tough that you know that your partner can't handle it. So you're going to anticipate something tough, and you're probably going to hang here. If somehow they do get it go. I mean, if they do get it back cross court, well, then you can anticipate you can start moving in a little bit sooner. But you sort of have to know your partner a little bit in terms of what they can and can't handle. You also have to know if your partner is thinking along the way that we've been talking about the whole time, that their shot here, they're really trying to play a transitional shot that is supposed to set you up. They're not trying to be the hero and play a winner from here. They're playing a ball. Hopefully it'll find the feet of the returner that's going to set you up. If you stay here, they've set you up and you haven't taken advantage of that good setup.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so have we covered from the returner's perspective? Do you think we've hit on all the bases there? Is there anything else you want to add before we move to the returner's partner?
Let's see. let me shut the door. I hear my wife in there grinding away in the breakfast shake. Mai's in there getting. So, I'm just thinking about, we haven't really talked about where you want to start on the line other than back or forward. I see a lot of players, and again, some of it depends on where the server starts. If you've got a server that, as we talked about in the beginning, where I don't think you should serve from, but they do serve from close to the center mark here, you already know that realistically the only place they can serve is down the tee or somewhere to your left. Is give yourself enough space. You don't want to crowd it because again you don't want to get crowded by the serve, but you can anticipate and almost invite the server to play it over. And then, as they go ahead and go through their tossing motion, you can start to move over in anticipation of getting that. But by and large, if they're going to get, server's going to start, as we talked about, a few feet inside the single sideline, I would say that I'm pretty close to the single sideline itself. This is really where I want to start. And, if I get too far out here in the alley, opens this up and makes it easy for the server to have that angle. And yet if I'm too far over here, it really opens up and invites that wide serve. So you're really trying to bisect what you think are the two extreme angles that the server's got. And assuming it's a right-handed player here, again, you lefties are a little strange, so we never know really what you guys are going to do. Well, but I would say you're a little bit closer to that single sideline returning serve as you would be over here when you're serving.
Mm-hmm. Now let me ask you this. This is the point I actually wanted to hit on earlier. Let's say the server gives you a tough ball, and maybe you're a little jammed, but for whatever reason you can't move forward and you're back at the baseline. What do you do then?
It just depends on what they give me.
Okay.
I mean, it could be that if they play, server comes in and I got to return, and the next shot I'm still back in the baseline, and the ball's in here, I'm probably going to play a transitional little slice that's going to get down low. Because I want them, again, what am I thinking about? I'm thinking about my partner. What shot can I play that's going to enable my partner? Well, if the server's, let's say in this area here on the service line, gripping and ripping up the line isn't enabling my partner. It could be that if I take a ball and drive it at my server's partner, or at the server's partner, that could be an opportunity, but I better be really precise with that because if I don't get it right at them or I kind of jam them in the volley, I'm really putting this guy in jeopardy. And if I go ahead and really drive one back to the server, same thing. I might get it up high, give this guy an opportunity for a poach off that second ball, or give this server another opportunity here, might pound it down on my partner. So I'm really thinking, what ball can I play depending on the quality of this server's transitional shot? What ball can I play that's going to set this guy up? Now, how the heck did I do that? Let's see.
The old misclick.
There we go. And that's what I'm thinking about. And again, it might be a little slice down here low. It might be kind of a topspin roll, or it might be a lob. And again, if it's a deep lob, I could be thinking that that's setting up my partner. And one of the things I think about with, who plays what side of the court when we're returning serve, do I play the do side or do I play the ad side? I really love to have, who's got the best overhead between the two of us? And if the best overhead is this guy here, I'm going to put him as the returner's partner. So right now, I think I've set him up for the next shot, which is going to be, even if this guy comes over and plays a lob back, well, you know what? I've really set him up for the overhead. So that's really what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, what shot can I hit that's really going to enable my partner the best?
And do you ever? One thing I don't think you mentioned was kind of the down the middle shot, maybe right at the tee. Do you ever kind of drive it there, or you're more just kind of a little bit cross court in terms of playing a ground stroke back?
Okay, so if let's say that the
Server's there.
yeah, the
Yeah. Do you ever
server's
just
here,
hammer it right at sort of the
the tee.
service line, the tee?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Here's the problem: if the ball is on the outside of me, and I'm the returner, if I've got and I'm right-handed, so I got a forehand. If I try to go for the tee, where's it going?
Sure.
It's really going very close to that server's partner. And yeah, I mean, this guy's had to move over slightly because this guy's got to kind of mirror the position of the ball. If the ball's in the alley, he's got to come over here a little bit. If the ball is in the middle, a good service partner, going to mirror that position a little bit. So if I get a forehand that's on the outside, I'm not going to risk the middle because I don't think I can get it there. So I'm always going back cross court to this guy's feet. On the other hand, if I get a ball here to my backhand, the ball's in the middle, and now the middle has got some possibilities. There's no question that if I drive it here in the middle, assuming I'm not too far, right there by the center hash mark, and if I don't get it up high, if it's down low, yeah, I mean, these guys have to figure out who's going to take it. So that's always a good thing for us if we're the returning team. If there's any kind of doubt, we're probably going to win the point. But one of them is going to have to take it, and which is going to draw one or if not both into the middle. And if it does come back quickly, one of these guys, whoever took it, might be in the middle, hung out to dry for a second, and that might mean that their alley is now wide open. The only thing to be thinking about is that when you go in the middle here, have you left yourself kind of hung out to dry? If this guy's a right-handed player, and I would say by and large forehand volleys might be a little stronger than backhand volleys, at the rec level, you're sort of feeding this guy a high, I wouldn't say high, but a forehand volley, and this guy's going to have a pretty good opportunity here to be able to now really put you in trouble. So a lot of this is I'll go to the middle from here, assuming that I'm on good balance and my stroke technique's going to not make me fall one step further away from my half of the court. If I can play this shot knowing that the ball might come back, that I can cover up my half of the court, absolutely. That's a great time to play the ball in the middle.
Okay. So you play that first ball, and then you're sort of chilling back at the baseline, and what happens now? Is it kind of more of the same, where you're sort of evaluating you and your partner are one up, one back, and now your opponents are two up? What happens now, assuming they come back cross court you?
All right, so I've got the ball.
You're obviously you're in a disadvantageous position.
Absolutely. I mean, the court geometry wise here, the chances are we're going to lose this point.
Sure.
So, what can I do to try to get those odds in my favor? And there's not much. I mean, you're probably going to lob in this situation, and best case, if you're going to lob, you're going to go over this guy here because this guy's still in. If he's got the right court position, which is in the back third of the box, I'm always trying to lob over this guy's backhand, and sometimes, and again, this takes practice. I don't want to lob so deep that automatically he knows that he can't get it and they call a switch and this guy goes over and it bounces and he's probably going to play a lob back too. I'm actually going to play it. I'm going to play my lob assuming that this guy right here, the server's partner, is a righty. I'm going to play it just deep enough over his backhand to force him to take it, because if he doesn't take it, it's going to bounce and keep going. No one's going to be able to get to it. So that lob is probably going to end up, behind the service line. If there was, we can draw the imaginary line here, but it's in the alley, and this guy doesn't have time to run around it and play an overhead. He's got to play the high backhand volley. And if that's the case, I see him go back, he's going to play the high backhand volley, bang, I'm in. And I'm getting in just as tight as I can because I know he's not going to hit a winner from here. And I really know that worst case for us is he hits a tough ball back down here to my feet, or he hits a tough ball back down here to my partner's feet. But that's okay because we still have this guy in a lousy court position. So one of the shots we all need to work is, and you brought up a good situation here, Will, is when the serving team has the right court position and you've now, as the returner, you got a third ball. You've hit your return to serve. You've now hit another ball cross court, and you're still stuck in the back. What do? Probably the best shot is going to be that looper lob over the backhand into the alley where it's not so deep that it's a switch, where this guy's really forced to take it and have to deal with it. Too often what I see is this player, the returner, hits this shot and stays here. Or I see this player move back. So you want to make sure that if, and you can evaluate your lob. You can see what this guy's doing. If you hit a lob and it's ending up on his overhead side, obviously you know that you can't do anything. You'd have to stay there. This guy might have to back up a step to try to defend. But both players, the returner and the returner's partner, you can look at this guy. You can see what he's doing. And if he's turning to take that high backhand, you guys need to crash the boards and try to really get a good net position.
Yeah, and what I want to do real quick is relate this to tennis ninja terms. When you, Brent, if you could move the returner back to the baseline like we had initially. Thank you. Yeah, and assuming he's hitting the ball here, this would be a situation where you're kind of jumping straight from defense to offense, and we saw how that's a tricky thing to do. I mean, like you said, Brent, what you just described is you're typically going to lose most of these points because you have to hit a really good shot to stay in the point in this instance. So you can see why now the one up, one back formation pretty weak, particularly when both guys are at net. You're really, in a bad spot. You have to come up with the goods in terms of the shot you hit or the point's going to be over.
Yeah, and I think, I'd said the solution is the lob, and I think that most rec players would agree. I mean, most rec players are going to lob if they are back here on the baseline with this third shot, which gets us back to the server on that transitional shot. You might know. I mean, you might know the tendencies of this guy is they don't want to come in, and so when you play this transitional shot, don't play it safely deep that allows you time to get up here. And now this guy is most likely to lob. Either he's going to hit a tough lob, in here as we just described, or he's going to play a real deep one. Again, you want to be thinking about what shot can you hit to enable your partner. And that shot's going to be a short transitional shot in here that brings this player up and out of their comfort zone, where now the geometry is really bad for that returning team. Assuming that by the time they get to it, the ball's down low, you guys really have the advantage in that situation.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, what else do we need to touch on here, Brent? Or did we get it all? And should we move on to the returner's partner?
I think that's pretty much it. I mean,
Okay.
we could talk about 1,000,001 different situations, but the takeaway I really want everyone to have is that when you're the player that's behind your partner, obviously when you serve and obviously when you return serve, those are the two players that start behind their partners. As the point develops, those partners might change, and now either the returner's partner or the server's partner becomes the player behind their partner for whatever reason. But the key is when you're the player back behind your partner, I want you always thinking that your job is to play shots that are going to set up, hopefully, or at least enable your partner to show some movement, to show some visual distraction.
Great stuff. All right. Well, let's move on to the returner's partner in that case, and yeah, let's start with the serve. When the server's winding up, getting ready to go, what's the returner's partner doing?
Okay. This is the position I think in doubles where most rec level players don't take advantage of the opportunities that they're given. And I think what happens here is it's being coached that the returner's partner starts on the service line initially to help the returner with the call on serves that are just a hair deep. And that's fine, okay. You can still do that from a little bit closer inside too. But I think more realistically, the reason that we coach people to start here on the service line is because the return to serve, if it's not safely going back cross court, is that you're setting up the server's partner or you're setting up the server on maybe a weak return to serve. And if you were to start in the same position as the service partner starts, there's just too risky that you're going to end up not being able to defend balls that will most likely go in the middle. So, we coach a lot, start here on the service line, more for worst case, more as a defensive position in case the return to serve does not get past the service partner. The reality is that when players start here, when this ball does get cross court, and even if it's down here low at the server's feet, this partner doesn't move. This partner just stands here. And now what happens is frequently a ball gets popped up and they just don't move. They don't go for it because they're not really in a position on the court where they can take advantage of it. I was playing with a guy the other day, and we don't play doubles very often, but it's one of those days, and I know you've had this day from time to time, Will, when you just cannot miss a return to serve. I mean, everything that's coming into you, you're either sliding it down low or you're banging it. But the point is that you're taking every return to serve and you're getting it past that service partner. You're getting it down low to the server. And I told my guy, I said, look, if you want to help me with a call, that's fine. I don't really need your help on it. But the reality is, I said, have I missed any returns that have gone to the service partner? He said, no. And I said, so you don't need to start here. If you can trust that I'm going to take, a majority of the returns to serve, go back safely cross court, I want you to start at least in that back third of the service box. So, my point here is that you kind of have to know the degree of difficulty of the serve. Can your returning partner handle it? If they're handling that return to serve and taking it back cross court to the server, why would you start on the service line? Because most players when they start here don't have a lot of footwork that takes them up inside. So my advice is, evaluate more your partner's ability to return serve back cross court away from the service partner. And, worst case, if you're playing against a server who is just cranking that serve and, your partner's struggling it to get away, keep that return away from here, you might have to play a few points where you back up and really go into pure defense mode on that return to serve. But, by and large, especially if you get a second serve, you got to trust that your returning partner is going to be able to handle it. And if this partner's poaching a lot, either be able to lob to keep you out of danger or be able to, play a shot up the line here. But if they're going cross court, what's their thinking here? Their thinking is, what? I'm trying to play shots that enable you. And as a returner's partner, you are not enabled if you're hanging back here in the service line. So I really encourage you to sort of, think about your returning partner. Are they hitting shots a lot cross court where there's some opportunities being presented to you guys? And if that's the case, don't start on that service line. Start in the back third of that service box where you can really take advantage of that opportunity of that low cross court return. And if you do, now, assuming this thing is just not crushed where you've got no time, you can now do the same thing that we've been talking about with the service partner, where you can show a little bit of a fake. You can show a little bit of movement out here in the server's visual landscape that can be a distraction. Just by this little fake move in here is enough, often enough, to where you've distracted visually the server, they're not handling that tough shot, and you're creating an unforced error. And I'm telling you, every time I hit a good cross-court return to serve and my returner's partner shows a little bit of movement, and the ball doesn't come back, I know that it's not because of my return, it's because of that movement. So, the combination of the good return to serve down low at the server's feet combined with some movement by this returner's partner, whether it's a fake and you come back or whether it's a early fake and then you go, that's really your job. You're really trying to visually distract, number one, but you're trying to now control where does that server hit their next shot. And if you've showed enough poaches in here where they start going back to you, now you've got them primed for a big fake and you come back and, they're going to go ahead and play a shot to you. And, you ought to have a put away opportunity. The biggest abuse I see in this position is players getting stuck on that service line. Or occasionally I see it, where, a player gets up here where they should be, and now as the server hits their ball back to the returner, they back up and they're stuck there for the rest of the point.
Yeah, you cannot not take advantage of the opportunities your partner, the returner, is giving you. And look, if you start the, it's perfectly fine to start off on the service line if that's where you're comfortable. But, this would be a situation where you would look at the server and you would kind of gauge based on what they're doing how well your partner rather has hit their return. And if you think the server's going to have a tough volley to handle, that's when you start closing, right? I mean, that's when you're going to do your fakes. You're going to move forward. You're going to look to take advantage of the opportunities your partner, the returner, has given you.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it gets back to, the server's partner doesn't start on the service line. And the reason is because they know that the server is going to be able to play their shot cross court and in front of them. So they never start back here on that. They always start up in here. Well, if I'm the returner's partner and you're my partner, here's the returner. If I know that you're always going cross court with your return every time and keeping it away from this partner, I'm starting up in here all day long. I've got no reason to start on the service line. The only reason we start here is more of a defensive mode. But again, it might take a game or two to where if you don't know these guys and, all of a sudden, this guy might have a big serve, but, you as the returner, I see that you're handling that and you're going cross court. Might take me a game or two to realize I don't need to start in this, on the service line. I can trust that you're going to take your return and go cross court, set me up, enable me. So I'm always going to start a lot closer to be able to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I mean, I see this so often. It's the game plan you come into a match, not just doubles, but singles as well. That initial game plan you have, plan A, doesn't ever change. And if you're starting on the service line in the returner's partner's case, and you're not making any adjustments based on your partner's, your opponent's, or the ebb and the flow of the match, that's a huge, huge mistake. So, absolutely, guys, you got to take advantage of what Brent is saying right now, and figure out after a couple of games what's going on here. Can you be more aggressive? Can you move in? Can you disrupt and distract the server in this case as he's closing to set up an opportunity in your advantage?
Yeah, and I think the biggest one of the biggest mistakes that rec players make is let's say that the returner gets it back cross court and the server's having to deal with a tough ball and you've moved in and you anticipate a ball going back cross court. You move, and let's say that you moved at the perfect time. The server never saw you, but you can't stop the server from guessing or anticipating what you might do. And now the server goes up the line to play a winner. All right, well that's 1 point. And I think one of the big mistakes that players make is they get burned once and that's it. They just stay there for the rest of the match. And as a server, they're going, you know what? I can't believe it. It only took me one time to get this guy to never move again. So, think about this. If you're the returner's partner and your returner's got the ball down low and you cross in here in anticipation of this ball going back, but instead it goes up here, what do you think what the server's thinking the very next time in this situation? Well, I guarantee you the server's thinking, well, I burned him the very last point. There's no way he's going to go. So what do you now know? You now know that if that's, you don't know it for sure, but if you're a normal person, you're going to know that this guy's thinking, you're not going to be moving, you're going to be going cross court with it. That is the ideal time to go. So I really want everyone to be thinking about, you're going to lose some points. I mean, with this movement, when you cross in the middle in anticipation to get a ball that's going cross court, either you're going to move over there and you're going to miss the volley, or you're going to move over there and the server, saw you moved too early, they'll go behind you, or you moved over there and the server in this case, anticipates it, guesses it, and you lose that 1 point. That's fine. You're going to lose some points. And I always tell my partner every time they move and miss a shot or they get burned, they apologize and I say, hey, look, that's 1 point. Good move. I want you to keep moving, because if we now move in the next point, now we really get back into the minds of those opponents where they really don't know what we're going to be doing. So, evaluate the big picture. as opposed to one, each and every point. Every time you go, or every time you go, it's not an opportunity to evaluate this as a success or a failure. There are a lot of residual benefits from you going, showing movement, and maybe losing that point. You still have the thought in your opponent's minds that this is going to happen in the future.
Yeah, I saw kind of a similar phenomenon played out in the junior level where you'd start a match and your opponent would just blast a big serve or a big forehand, and then the other guy would just get psyched out because the guy hit a huge shot, as if that's sort of an indication of things to come. And in reality, the guy just treed and hit a crazy good shot that he's not able to replicate. And you can't let that deter you, like you've been saying, Brent, from making the correct play. And you're not always going to win the point, but if you make the correct play, you're going to win more than you lose. And you're talking about these. You give this guy a low volley, and he redirects that down the line. That's a really hard shot to hit.
Very tough.
Very tough. So good for him if he makes it once or twice, but he's not going to do it consistently. And actually, the one thing I like, this is a personal play I love, is if I see the returner go down to dig out a low volley, I'm almost always moving, because I'm thinking to myself, first of all, he's going to pop this thing up cross court. Second of all, if he tries to go line with this, good for him. If he makes it, clap my hands and move on to the next point. But if he tries to go down the line with that, he's going to make a lot of mistakes. So this is really a great time to just to keep moving and keep crossing, because you're definitely setting yourself up for success.
Well, I think if you look at the geometry of the tennis court, that the returner's partner has a better opportunity of actually moving into the middle to intercept balls going cross court off of the return of serve, assuming we have a server that is transitioning, as opposed to the server's partner off of the serve itself, because the returner's back here in the baseline. So there's a little more time involved. There's visually the returner is looking more on a horizontal plane at the incoming ball, as opposed to the server who's having to deal with a low ball. The visual plane that the server's looking at is now more down, and it's not out here in the landscape. So what happens is there's more of an opportunity here because of that. Also because now the ball's down below the top of the net, where if it's down below the top of the net, there's only one place that the server can hit the ball where it's got a chance of going back in play, and that's back at an upward angle. You want that. So there was one other situation I wanted to mention here with the returner's partner. Sometimes what I'll tell my partner, if I'm the returner's partner, and I'll say, hey, look, if you get this return down low, I'm definitely going. But it's always conditioned with, if the serve has taken you out wide, and now you're out, now the returner is out wide, and even though they get it cross court, I'm not going to go. I will definitely show a fake, but I'm not going to risk going where I got my partner way over here, and there's no way that they can cover up. On the other hand, if the serve goes down the tee, and my partner, the returner, has to really stretch out to where when they make contact, it's a step or two, into my half of the court, and they play a tough ball back here, I'm going every time. I'm going every time.
Now you have to cover the open court.
I got to cover the open court, and I don't care if this guy goes behind me, because I got my partner over here anyway. So those are a couple of conditions on the returner's partner, but basically, those are kind of the four starting positions of each one of the players, and kind of the roles of what each player is trying to achieve.
Mm-hmm. And I think again, what's key in what you just highlighted, and what is such a central, there we go, got it out, a central theme to Tennis Ninja is always understanding the geometry of the court. And you just highlight that again with the returner's partner. I mean, you're very aware, based on where the servers place the ball and what constraints that's placing on the returner, Well, the returner's partner sometimes poaches simply to cover the open court in this instance when the serve went down the tee. So, just like we saw with double, or just like we saw with singles so often in Ninja, in doubles, you have the exact same issues to deal with. I think, like we talked about earlier, a little bit more vertical considerations in this instance, since we're both teams ideally are trying to close so much. But it's so important, the geometry of the court, to keep in the back of your mind as you're making decisions on where to go at the tennis ball.
No question. No question. And I mean, that's really what separates good doubles players who actually know how to play doubles as opposed to singles players who are trying to play doubles. And there's a real connection between the two partners. I play with a couple guys, but both of them understand. If I'm in the backcourt, they know that I'm trying to set them up. They know that whatever ball I've got, that I'm trying to enable them, and they're trying to do the same thing for me. And we're going to move geometrically in ways that try to minimize the opportunities for our opponents. I mean, I think you said in the beginning, that obviously the doubles court is bigger than the singles court, and so we can't, as a doubles team, we can't cover 100% of the court 100% of the time. You can really cover about 80% of the court on any given shot that your opponents are just about to hit. You can't cover the whole court. So you're trying to maximize that 80, a lot of it by where you're standing, by where you and your partner are standing in the court, but you're also trying to maximize that 80 with movement, with showing distraction in the visual landscape, by trying to get your opponents to not know where you're going to be, to try to get them to slow the swing speed down. And if you can do that, if you can maximize that 80% coverage 100% of the time, I guarantee you're going to win most of those doubles matches.
Yeah, and that other 20% there is the hardest part of the court to hit into. If we come back to singles, you're in a cross court rally with your opponent, and you both are hitting pretty quality balls. The down the line shot is going to be the most difficult one to pull off there. So if your opponent gets a couple down the line and he hits a winner, good for him, but it's just not going to happen that often. That's definitely the part of the court you can you want to give away first.
Right.
In other words, so
right.
Yeah, I mean, like Brent's saying, cover the 80% of the court. Cover that. That's the 80% that's easiest for your opponents to hit into, and if the 20% that's super hard is a little bit exposed, that you're going to be just fine. You're going to be just fine, and more broadly, if we go back, Brent, to the discussion we had at the top of this series here, where we were talking about Rafael Nadal and how at the pro level sometimes you see one up, one back, even though it's a weaker formation. Those guys can play those weaker formations because the quality of their shot making is just off the charts. But we saw how with really strong understanding of strategy, you don't have to be able to blast the ball. You don't have to have, unbelievable ground strokes or unbelievable serves or volleys or whatever. You just have to have a really firm understanding of strategy. And if you got that wrapped up, you got it locked up, and you can implement it, without really having to think about it too much, when you get it, that's really when you're going to see these quick improvements, these quick gains and better results. And it's not a situation where you need to get out there and hit a bunch of reverse forehands until you're hitting like Rafa, because in reality that's not really going to happen. And it's just the pros that can pull off such absurd shots that sometimes they can maybe not play the highest percentage game.
Yeah, no question. It's tough. I mean, we get a lot of our teaching models by the pros. I mean, so a lot of times we look at the pros and we say, well, this guy does that, so it's got to be good enough for us. But I've sort of been harping on this for a long time. I mean, I kind of feel like this is almost like one of the few times in the history of the game where it's really difficult to look at the pros and use them as the models to try to copy and sort of teach. And especially for the rest of us. Now, I mean, and so it's just it's a different game. And like we talked about at the top, well, trying to copy those guys, I don't know. It's rough. It's really really tough. And some people, I get people from time to time saying, can you teach me, Rafa's, forehand? Can you teach me Roddick's serve? And I just, it's not with total disrespect, but I say, as soon as you look like those guys, come and see me, because these guys are just specimens that, I mean, the world of tennis has never seen this level of fitness, has never seen this level of speed, has never seen this level of racket and string technology. That all that fitness, all that speed, and the great athletes, of how they can use that technology to their advantage. So it's really a challenge right now for teaching pros and for rec players to really be able to pick out what does this current crop of touring pros, what do they do that we can realistically copy and model? And what are some of the things that we just have got to say, what, that's great for them, but it's not good for us. And as we've been discussing here with this doubles, what's realistic in terms of court positioning, shot selection, and all that's going to make you a better doubles player. And the one thing we haven't talked about is that I think is so important is that you really seek out and find a doubles partner that wants to buy into this kind of stuff. And it's tough. I mean, you can find, you can play a lot of doubles out there, but you might not have someone who's on the same page with you. You might understand all the geometry that we've been talking about and all the shot selection and this and that. But if you don't have a partner that wants to do the same thing, it's frustrating.
Yeah, and that's that discussion could take us several more hours to work through. I want to go back to what you said. Fantastic point. This is something that everybody listening needs to take to heart. That there are some things that you can pull from the pro game, but you have to be so careful because there's so many things you don't want to copy, and you can get yourself into so much trouble. And that's why, with Ninja, I loved creating this program, and I love working with you on the doubles here, Brent, because, the geometry of the tennis court doesn't change. The angles don't change. That applies to the pros just like it applies to us. So here's really a situation where you can pull a little bit more liberally from the professional game because they're adhering to the same rules that we have to adhere to. So, there's a situation where we can kind of, mimic what the pros are doing a little bit and have, pretty quick success because, again, it just kind of takes getting this stuff and then you can implement it.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're saying, Will, is no question that the tennis court for them is the same for us. So the geometry is the same. What they can do, though, was with that geometry and the tennis ball is something that we just can't do.
Sure,
and so that's where we have to be careful. And I'm always concerned about injuries. And your job, my job as tennis teaching professionals is to help tennis players play the game for the rest of their lives. And so we have to, as pros, we have to educate our students as to what's realistic. And just like you said, geometry of the court's the same for both the rec players and for the pro level, but we've got to be able to understand what we can do with the tennis ball, given that geometry, that's going to be more effective, that's going to be much more fun to play than sometimes what we see in the Pro Tour.
Absolutely. Excellent point, Brent. Is there anything else you would like to add before we wrap this thing up?
I think we're good to go.
You've provided a ton of information. This is one of those series that I think people are going to have to listen to a couple times because there was a lot in here, and I would encourage everybody who has listened and watched this to think about what Brent has said against the principles we've talked about in Tennis Ninja, because all the principles we've talked about apply to dubs as well. So yeah, definitely do that. But yeah, Brent, you have something to say? I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, I was just. I mean, we've talked a lot here. Well, we've given out a lot of information, and basically, if you can master the four starting positions of each one of the individual players, and shot selection wise, if you can really understand where you want to play your first couple of shots, depending on which court position you or which player you are out here, after that, I guarantee it. It's the game's pretty simple. So I think this has been a great series, Will. I really appreciate you having me on for this, and I'm happy to come on and do it anytime in the future.
Absolutely, Brent. It is. I would say guess, but I don't think it's too much of a guess. I'm pretty confident all the Tennis Ninja subscribers are going to want to hear a lot more from you. So in the meantime, what you guys can do is go check out webtennis.com. You can see the address on the screen there. Awesome stuff there. It's a fantastic website. You can, what I was doing earlier when I was trying to read some of your accomplishments was I went to your about us page, and there's a very long list of tournament wins in there. So go check that out. But thanks again, Brent. Really appreciate it. Look forward to doing something similar in the near future.
My pleasure, Will. Thanks very much.